right, guys. Once again, welcome to Everything Is. This is your man, K. Woods, Kory, whatever you will feel like calling me. I'm right here with.
It's your man's Ant.
And man, Ant, you know what week it is?
WrestleMania week.
It's WrestleMania week. Oh boy. And who better to talk about WrestleMania with than the one, the only? We got to do it right. We got to do it right now. WWE Hall of Famer Eric Bischoff. Welcome once again.
Thank you, guys. And just for the record, that's the first time on anybody's podcast I have been introduced as a WWE Hall of Famer. Another first right here.
Oh, hey, you got to break them first with us, baby. That's how we do it in Detroit.
I love it.
So, let's get right into it. First off, how shocked were you when you got the announcement? We saw you on WWE's, I believe it was the Jump,
The bump.
the bumps, the jumps, the bump, and you were you got the news. How shocked were you?
No, excuse me. It was on
after the bell.
Podcast.
Oh, Kory, yeah, okay,
Kory Gray's podcast.
My bad.
Yeah, so it's Kory Gray's podcast.
So how shocked were you when you got that announcement?
Can't lie to you guys. I had a pretty good idea what might happen.
Mm-hmm.
But when it actually happened, it was a different kind of, not surprised or shocked, but overwhelmed would be the best way to say it.
Did you you said you kind of felt it was coming. I was of the mindset like, man, does Eric Bischoff deserve to be a WWE Hall of Famer? Yes, he does. But after when you made the appearance with AEW, I was like, I'm surprised that they went that route. And then, did you think that they were going to go that route, especially after that appearance? Because you know how sometimes WWE can reportedly be a little petty.
No, I wasn't worried about that, and again, I'm going to be straight with you guys. I let WWE know what I was going to do before I did it.
Okay.
And I think because of that, and it just comes down to communication, guys. When you're honest with people and you're transparent, nobody gets, chapped ass. Mm-hmm. I think people only get, irritated or get chapped ass when they're blindsided by things. Mm-hmm. That can make people feel a little bit disrespected. So before I did any appearances on television, even though I wasn't obligated to, I wasn't under contract to WWE, or we weren't talking about doing anything in the future, but I have a relationship with people that work there, and I don't like to blindside people that I'm friends with. So I think because I let them know and I was open and honest and transparent, they didn't take any exception to anything that I did.
Hey, that's really great to hear that. And also, too, I guess we're seeing that as a trend because now, I guess the day after WrestleMania, Chris Jericho's going to appear on Stone Cold's Broken Skull session. So it seems like WWE is not really, giving too much flack for former talent or people they have prior relationships with going and doing business with AEW and still appearing on WWE programming.
Yeah, and look, I'm sure when people listen to the show, they're going to hear what I'm about to say, and it'll end up being clipped, and there'll be little sound bites of it, or people will report on it online and distort it and turn it inside out, because that's what people do to entertain themselves. But I think it's safe to say that WWE doesn't see AEW as a threat. AEW is in the same business. And just because you're in the same business doesn't necessarily make you a threat on your business. It's like if you had a great restaurant, I had a great restaurant, and our great restaurants were a couple miles apart. So what? It doesn't matter really. And I think AEW is a young, new, growing, exciting company. WWE is a very well-established worldwide global media enterprise. And I just don't think that WWE is that concerned about the perception of talent, engaging in each other's show, especially on something like a podcast. It's not like Chris Jericho is going to show up and work a match on Monday Night Raw on SmackDown. So I think the audience, the people on the outside, tend to make create a lot more drama, or what they think is drama, on the inside of the business than truly exists.
I just look at it like they want to recreate the Monday Night Wars over again. That's why they just keep, the fans are keep saying, AEW's better or WWE's better. I just think they're trying to recapture that magic from back then,
You're absolutely right on the money with that. People, they missed that era, the Monday Night War era, so badly because there was so much growth and there was so much cool stuff going on. And the business just exploded, almost overnight in a way. And people missed that excitement. The product isn't quite as good as it was back then. There is no real competition. The fact that AEW's got a show on Wednesday nights, they don't really compete with Monday Night Raw. They certainly don't compete with SmackDown on Fox. If you look at things, there was a guy a couple days ago posted on the social media or on Twitter. His name is Brandon Thurston. He has a site called WrestleNomics.
Oh yeah, I've heard about it.
Brandon does a great job, really digging into. He does a lot of research that gives you a much more complete picture than just head-to-head ratings. And if you look at some of the recent things that he's posted, WWE is in a class unto itself, and that's not going to change anytime future in the near future, no matter what anybody does.
Hey, I want real quick. I want to go back to your to the WWE Hall of Fame for one quick second. Last night, along with you becoming an inductee, they also inducted the NWO. I was of the mindset like, okay, shouldn't Eric Bischoff technically go in as a two-time WWE Hall of Famer? Because you were, if anybody was instrumental in the NWO, I mean, in that incarnation, you're just as pivotal of a character talent of that group as anybody.
Definitely should have had 2 rings.
Yeah. Well, here's another one, guys. I haven't discussed this publicly yet. I haven't even discussed it on my own podcast yet. So,
Give it the first.
That's what I think of you guys.
I appreciate it.
I was originally supposed to get scheduled. I was originally supposed to be inducted last year with the NWO.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I didn't know that, and I wasn't supposed to know that.
Mm.
Oh wow!
The truth is, I left WWE in October, right, when I got fired, and I hung around Stamford, Connecticut for a month or two because I didn't have any big plans. I didn't know where. I had no plans. I was out of the job. And I had, I was living in a corporate apartment. I had like 4 or 5 months left of my lease or whatever it was. So my wife and I just said, hell with it. Let's just hang around Stamford for a couple of weeks or a month. And then we'll drive down to Florida because that's where our son and our daughter-in-law live. And we'll drive down there in November, December, hang around down in Florida for a couple months, which we did. Our daughter flew in from LA. We spent the holidays together. My wife and I stuck around Florida because why come back to Wyoming in the middle of winter if there's no reason to?
Real.
Definitely.
So we hung out in Florida and had a great time. And about February, decided to head back to Wyoming. Now, keep in mind, we'd been gone from Wyoming for whatever that is, 7-8 months at that point. So we were anxious to get home. So we're driving back from Florida. We got to Rockford, Illinois. We decided to spend the night in Rockford, Illinois. And we went into this hotel and went into the restaurant and ordered dinner. And I got a phone call from someone at WWE. And said, hey, Eric, how are you? And I said, great. They said, hey, we'd like you to come and be a part of the Hall of Fame ceremony. They wanted me to come as a guest. And I was flattered and excited, and I left with WWE on very good terms. So there was none of what people would expect, right? There, nothing like that. But I didn't feel like going back to Connecticut. I hadn't even been home yet, and they're already wanting to book me. And by the way, they wanted me to turn around and go right back to Tampa, where I just spent 3 months. It's like, I just want to go home. I appreciate the invitation, but I really, really just want to get home, and I'll be happy to come next year. Then I got a call back about 2 days later going, we really, really, really want you to come. I said, well, I really, really, really appreciate that, but I really, really, really want to get home even more. And then finally, Bruce Pritchard called me. And Bruce said, Eric, could you do me a favor? It would mean a lot to me if you would come and just be a guest. I thought, well, that's kind of weird because Bruce knows me. I don't like big crowds. I don't like formal functions typically. I mean, I enjoy them while I'm there in the moment, but truth be told, I live in Wyoming for a reason. I like space around me. I'm quiet. Sagebrush is cool. Crowds, not so much. And finally I said, okay, Bruce, I'll come because, I love Bruce. He's one of my best friends. And then, of course, COVID hit. What was going to happen, and I didn't find this out until recently, but what was going to happen is I was supposed to be sitting in the audience. And then when the NWO got inducted, Hulk Hogan was supposed to say, wait a minute, this doesn't feel right. Where's Eric Bischoff? Of course, Eric Bischoff would have been sitting out with everybody else. And they would have said, no, you got to kind of come up here and be here with us. And of course, I would have done that. And then they were going to reveal the video packages, induct me as a surprise and all that kind of stuff because they know I love surprises.
Yeah.
But that didn't happen because of COVID, right? Mm-hmm. So this year, they decided when there was going to be a Hall of Fame, rather than because it wouldn't have been a surprise anymore.
Yeah.
It would have been the same. They just decided, you know what, let's just induct him on his own. So and I didn't find out about any of that till after the fact, but that's why I wasn't inducted with the NWO.
Wow, makes sense, man. That's still an awesome accomplishment. But hey, we got a special guest. If you know Detroit like you do, this is Detroit Red Wings legend, Darren McCarty.
Mr. Bishop.
Hey, Darren, how are you, man?
Just a huge fan. Actually, we're more of the same age than these kids. So I've been a huge fan watching you forever and stuff like this. And congratulations.
Thank you.
On a long overdue. It would have been, now that you tell us that would have been unbelievable, not only for you because you love surprises, but the fact that you're back in. My big question, right? Because when these guys, my boys here at the Woodward Sports Network, they told me that you were coming on, you're the king of the factions and everything seems to go with factions. I wanted to ask you your thoughts on why did Vince break up the Hurt Business before WWE, and with what's going on in the Forbidden Door with all the different factions in AEW, how their storyline and all that. How do you see all of this playing out where wrestling is at in 2021? Because it feels more like when I was their age, when you were in there, breaking out the NWO, doing all the different things. How does Eric Bischoff see this as the elder statesman and sort of the faction, big faction guru?
I have mixed emotions about it. Obviously, it's cool. It's interesting, and I think factions kind of are reflective of our society. Whether it's politics or sports or anything else, we tend to kind of group ourselves together in the areas that we're most interested in. So I think people are kind of just culturally familiar with the group or faction concept. And so I think, wrestling often reflects society and it always has, sometimes in a good way, sometimes in a not so good way.
Right.
But I think what's happening now is, this is going to sound critical and I don't mean it to be, but I think if you look at wrestling now, I think there's more of it really than ever before. WWE's got 3 hours on Monday on USA in prime time. They've got 2 hours on Friday nights on Fox Network in prime time. AEW's got 2 hours on TNT, and there's a lot of other smaller, televised platform or companies out there. So there's a lot of wrestling out there. But I think one of the things that suffered as a result of the volume is the quality of the storytelling. It's the difference between, making cheese by hand and making the greatest gourmet cheese known to man and then making it in a factory. It's not quite the same. And I think what we're seeing is kind of a factory approach to storytelling because of the sheer volume, not because they don't have the talent, not because they don't have the creativity, but the sheer volume of it makes it easy to go the faction route because it seems like that would be an easier story to tell. And it can be if it's structured properly and you've cast it properly and there's a long-term plan. But if you haven't cast your story properly, just like a movie or a television show, if your cast isn't quite right, no matter how good the story is, it's not going to work. So you need a good cast, but you need a good story too. And right now I'm seeing a lot of factions, but I'm not seeing a lot of story.
Do you think that's why they broke the WWE made the decision to break the Hurt Business up? Because it feels like they were one of the prime attractions to Monday Night Raw. I mean, just look at the blowback that happened from Batista and various wrestlers just chiming out and not understanding the decision to break them up at their height.
Here we go again. This is going to sound negative, and I don't mean it to be. But Batista or Eric Bischoff or anybody else who's on the outside, no matter how much experience any one of us have, we're not in the business day to day. We're not behind the scenes. We're not looking at the business of the WWE business every single day. People that are in WWE have to. And here's what happens, and this is the downfall of factions. It's kind of the same as tag team wrestling in a way. One of the things that I got criticized for, early on in WCW was I started de-emphasizing tag teams. Nobody could understand why I did that. Didn't make sense to them as viewers or fans. But on the business side of the equation, here was what I was faced with. I have to fill up a 2-hour show with wrestling matches. A typical wrestling match involves 2 opponents, and that typical match will last for 12 to 14 minutes. Okay, there's a cost associated with that because I got a cost for one talent over here, and I got a cost for another talent over here. So there's a fixed cost when it comes to talent in producing one 12 or 14-minute match. Now, if I'm going to make it a tag team match, guess what happens to my fixed costs?
Doubles.
The talent side of it doubles. Now, if I've got factions, it triples or quadruples. And it gets to be very expensive. On one hand, creatively, it becomes kind of you paint yourself into a corner in a way because you've got this really powerful faction, but they can only really interact with other factions. So now instead of tag teams, you've got 6-man tag teams.
There's a
and not only does it get expensive for the same amount of television time that you're going to fill up with 2 characters, but from a storytelling point of view, the palette on which you have to paint your picture with becomes much, much smaller because there's not 6 or 8 other factions out there that you could tell a good story with. So it becomes really cumbersome. And now the reverse of that is you take Hurt Factory, it's getting over. Holy crap, it's getting over. Well, I can get more mileage out of those 3 guys individually because of what we just discussed than I can as a unit. Because as a team, as a faction, they're really one unit, one story. Whereas if I split them up, because I can always bring them back together again. And the story can always allow me to recreate that faction. They can always come back together at any time if they need to. But if I've got a faction that's over, I would be inclined to consider spinning them off as individuals because I can accomplish more from a storytelling point of view, and I can make more money and save more money at the same time.
It totally makes sense. It was just odd to break them up right before WrestleMania to all of us.
Yeah, and again, I'm not justifying it by any means. Yeah. Hopefully there was a plan. Hopefully somebody said, okay, what are we going to do after WrestleMania? Because, people start thinking about, I'm guessing, I don't know this, but I'm guessing people started internally in WWE may have started really formulating plans starting 4, 5, 6 months ago. So everything's building towards WrestleMania. But then what happens after WrestleMania? You've got to have a plan. And you can't wait for 2 or 3 weeks to figure out what that plan is. So the plan may have been, look, let's take these guys all the way up to WrestleMania, spin them off, and then start fresh new stories with that same talent because we know the audience loves it. So that might have been one of the reasons why they decided to pull the plug on it prior. But I don't know that. I'm guessing just based on experience. Batista doesn't know because he's not there every day. Hulk Hogan doesn't know, because he's not there every day. No matter, it doesn't matter. If you're not there every day and your job 12 hours a day is to write TV and plan for the next big event, none of us really know what's going on behind the scenes. And there's oftentimes logic and a good reason for some of those things. But as viewers, we're going, well, what the fuck? Why'd you do that?
Yeah. And it was crazy because I had a feeling it was going to happen. Like, I think the week before when he went into the locker room, was like, I'll give anybody a title shot, take out Drew McIntyre. I'm like, oh, they're about to break him up. But I try to keep like a little positive outlook, like, this could be like dissension in the team or something like that.
Well, keep that positive outlook because you don't know what's going to happen after WrestleMania. You may be happier after WrestleMania than you were with the Hurt Factory.
That's true.
I think that to your point, Eric, about understand, I don't think it's critical at all. I think you explain the why, and sometimes as wrestling fans, we're a lot impatient, right? When we don't understand what's going on right away and the gut wrench. So it's more, to my understanding, it's just sort of like social media. It's the TikToks, it's the 15 seconds. It's like, that's what the storyline is. And we're used to, I am growing up, that could play out in something. That's why I love some of the other companies, AEW, like with the Bullet Club. Like, I remember that from 6, 7, 8 years ago, when you can always bring it back. That's what it seems to me, but I don't think it was critical. I think as a wrestling fan, you explained it and it gave me more of a comfort. Even though I don't like the decision, I can accept it.
Yeah. And I think that's true in life, man. We've all been conditioned to read a headline or a bumper sticker or something on social media and we react to that. But we don't really know what we're reacting to. We don't know the rest of the story. We're just reacting to a headline or a bumper sticker, and the why of everything is what makes it interesting. Why do people do what they're doing? What's the motivation behind it? And when it comes to business, believe me, having been there and gotten bounced around quite a bit in the process, the business to business side of professional wrestling is way more complicated than fans can even imagine. It's really, really complicated.
Man, that is that like D-Max, just to piggyback off of D-Max, that gives me as a fan some solace, some comfort, because now I kind of, all right, maybe they could bring him back. Who knows? Maybe they could maybe the Hurt Business could earn their stripes back in WrestleMania. You never know. But speaking of WrestleMania is this weekend. Any talent, any matches that you're looking forward to?
I really am looking forward to Roman Reigns, Daniel Bryan, and Edge. Obviously, Roman Reigns is on a great trajectory right now. I think he's finally coming into his own after so many years. I mean, look at the same conversation we just had about Hurt Factory. What was it, 4, 5, 6 years ago? And Vince McMahon was pushing Roman Reigns down everybody's throat. The audience was rejecting it. Nothing was working. Well, Roman Reigns has found himself. He's found his character. Absolutely. WWE has found the right way to capitalize on that character. The timing is absolutely perfect for Roman Reigns to become the next John Cena or the next Rock. It's kind of leading to that opportunity. He's not there yet, but he could be at the rate he's going. He could be that next mega star. Bigger than he already is.
How much is that Paul Heyman's influence? Because it just seems like, is it help? Does it give him confidence, or because I totally notice, we all notice, this is the Roman Reigns that should have been, just the way he's on the mic, the way that he carries himself, his facial expressions, like he is what he's the head of the table. You know, so does Paul Heyman, like, how does that give him confidence as somebody who's been there a long time beside him, or?
I don't know. That's a question that only Roman Reigns could probably answer, honestly.
Okay.
But I don't. Well, how much does Paul Heyman talk? He doesn't talk much.
No.
He's there, right? But Roman is carrying it now. You go back and you look at Paul Heyman with Brock Lesnar. You never heard from Brock.
No,
you never did. Part of that is because he's got a voice like a 18-year-old high school girl.
Yeah.
And it kind of ruins the illusion. You got this unbelievably massive, powerful, incredibly talented, legitimate fighter and athlete, but his voice doesn't match the body. And I don't think Brock was comfortable on the mic. Some people just never get comfortable on the mic. Some people just have a hard time with it. They can do everything else, but dialogue isn't their friend. So that's where a guy like Paul Heyman is going to talk a lot. Whereas with Roman, we're hearing more and more and more from Roman and less and less from Paul. And I think there's a tremendous amount of support there for Roman in the beginning. It may have been very important in the beginning of, Roman's most recent kind of trajectory or arc. But what I see is Roman really beginning to figure out who Roman is. Same thing happened with Stone Cold Steve Austin. If you go back, when Steve left WCW, he went to ECW, kind of found himself because he could do whatever he wanted to in ECW back in the day, right? So he just go out and have fun and do whatever it is that inspires you. And I think during that process in ECW, Steve Austin began to kind of figure out who he was. He started getting comfortable with the Stone Cold Steve Austin character, even before he knew it was Stone Cold Steve Austin.
Yeah.
Then Steve got to WWE, and what did they do? They made him the ringmaster. And that didn't work.
Not at all.
At all. It sucked. Just massive suckage going on there, folks. But at some point, Steve went, no, that's not working for me. Here's what I think does. And the more he started doing it, the better he got at it. And the Stone Cold Steve Austin that we saw a year or two after the Tyson McMahon Austin kind of saga that kicked it off, that Stone Cold Steve Austin 2 or 3 years from that point was a much more powerful character because it was easier for Steve to be that character. It became more natural to him. And I think you're seeing the same thing. I'm seeing the same thing with Roman. I'm seeing Roman starting to go on a journey. And every week I see him, he's feeling more and more and more comfortable. And that's why I'm looking at this match going, this could be it. We've all been saying it, including myself. There hasn't been a major WWE star since John Cena.
Yeah.
Take Rock out of the equation because he went off to become the world's biggest star. But, Rock, John Cena, there hasn't been somebody that when you think of WWE, you think of that guy. Right now, when we think of WWE, we think of currently Roman Reigns, Drew McIntyre, Sheamus, and there's so many people that are all kind of on the same level. They're all superstars, but not one of them are really heads and tails above the other. I think that's about to change. I hope it is.
Do you think
that's one reason? And the other reason is because I think Edge could break out of this and become a bigger star after WrestleMania than he was at the peak of his previous run in WWE. I really believe that.
I agree too.
Yeah. I like what Edge doing with his character right now too. It's interesting.
Ultimate opportunist.
Yeah.
He's back.
Mm-hmm.
Just in any other matches that you're looking forward to? Me personally, I'm looking forward to seeing. Obviously, want to see what happens with Bobby Lashley and Drew McIntyre, but also there's been rumors. I don't know how true they are or not, but that Sasha Banks and Bianca Belair may close out night one for WrestleMania. That's definitely a match that I've been looking forward to, and the build they've brought about that. Any other matches like that you're looking forward to?
No, I look forward to them all. For me, WrestleMania isn't as much about any one match as it is about the event. It's like the Super Bowl. If you're in this business or a fan of the business, WrestleMania is the Super Bowl. And just like the Super Bowl, it brings an entirely different kind of energy and excitement to it. So that's how I look at it. There are certain matches that I like, the ones I just explained, or the one match I just explained that I'm really looking forward to. But that's for an entirely different reason. That's because when I look at wrestling, I'm looking at story, I'm looking at characters, I'm looking at pacing. I look at wrestling now from the eyes of a producer and not necessarily from the eyes of a fan. I can't help it. It's 34 years in this business. It's changed me. My brain has rewired itself. So I can't watch wrestling and just enjoy it for what it is. When I watch wrestling, I'm breaking everything down. How long the match is, what's the promo like, how's the character evolving? It's different. So for me, going to WrestleMania is just about the experience and to be anywhere near the energy, because it's a rush. It's a real rush.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, as far as story's concerned, that's pretty much is the best story in all of WrestleMania right now is Roman, Daniel, and Edge, and how they just put that together. So I see from your standpoint, I see exactly why you're looking more forward to that one than anything else.
So, you spoke about how COVID affected you in the Hall of Fame induction from last year. How do you think that with things starting to kind of, I guess you could say, trickle back to some type of normalcy or the new normalcy, how do you think that is going to affect the future of the industry?
Yeah, I wish I knew. If I knew the answer to that question and I was right, I'd be down on a beach in Maui throwing coconut wood, or in Vegas if I could read the future that well. I don't know. Here's my gut. It's just a guess. Is all instinct, whatever you want to call it. I don't think we're going to see live events the way we remembered live events for quite a while. I think it's going to take a year or two. If things keep going the way they're going, I think it's going to take a year or two before we see anything that resembles what life was like a little over a year ago. It's become too politicized. It's gone from being politicized to almost religion with people.
Yeah.
If you don't agree with me on my perception of what's going on, I'm the Antichrist. People can't even have decent conversations about things anymore. And because it's become so politicized, the COVID issue, COVID is very real, but I think a lot of the ramifications, the things that have happened as a result of COVID are not necessarily real. They're real, but they're self-inflicted. And they were motivated, I think, by political interests and financial interests. And for whatever reason, man, politicians Charles Barkley said it best.
Absolutely.
I don't know if you heard his interview.
Yeah,
absolutely. And I just think politics has gotten way, way out of control. I think the media is absolutely out of control. And I don't know how it's going to end or if it's going to end. But I think the way media divides people is going to make it even more difficult, regardless of the reality of COVID and the vaccines and all the other things that seem to be getting things under control. Regardless of all that, the politics and the media of it and people trying to leverage it and make it work for them financially or politically, I think it's going to keep things in a very confused state for at least another year, probably two.
Oh, God.
I see it.
All right, I'm going to step out. Absolute honor, Mr. Bischoff. Boys, thanks for letting me go. I got to do another show, but I'll be thinking about you during that three-way match, and hopefully, I'm sure it's going to be a doozy, but thank you for all you've done for wrestling and continue to do. And thanks for just being a great dude, man.
Man, hey, thanks for jumping in. It was great to meet you.
All right, now we're gonna do a quick pivot. I want to pick your brain before we get out of here. Right now, during this whole pandemic, I'm sure you've been keeping up with wrestling. We've talked about Bobby, Roman Reigns, the Hurt Business. If from your eyes looking at the product, has there, outside of we talking Roman, has there been any breakout star in your opinion during this COVID, like somebody that really upped their game during this whole pandemic, took advantage of it?
Well, I
You keep putting them on the spot, man.
no, I don't mind that at all. Riddle, I think, is kind of interesting to me. But I don't think anybody's broken out. I mean, and I think there's a good reason for that. There hasn't been a crowd in over a year. And here's another, inside look at baseball, I guess. When you're producing wrestling, you're writing wrestling, especially for a large company like WWE. You're writing a lot of stories, and you write those stories, before COVID, you go out, you put that story out there, and you'd see how the audience is reacting to it. And maybe you tweak that story or take it in a different direction completely. Or maybe you just pull the plug on it. You're using the crowd's reaction as a way to help guide the story going forward. It's a great situation in many respects because you're getting immediate feedback that you can interpret as a writer or a producer to allow you to tweak the story as you go to make it better or take it in the direction it needs to go. Without that crowd, what have you got?
Pipe in noise.
It's like, it's like your favorite, musician. They're going to try out some new music, but they're going to try it out in an empty arena. How do you know if the fans are going to like it? You don't. You're guessing as you're going. That's one of the biggest impacts I think that the COVID situation has had on WWE or AEW or anybody else, is you're putting your stories out there and it all sounds good to you, and the three other people in the room, and you put it on a piece of paper, it looks great on paper, and you go out there and you do it in the ring on television, but there's no audience there to give you any kind of feedback. So you don't know if the people at home are reacting to the things that you think on paper they're going to react to. It's a complete disconnect. And that makes it hard. And because of that, I think it's been hard for talent to kind of try new things and find out whether it works or not because there's no immediate feedback.
Yeah.
So, I think if no one has broken out over the last 12 months, other than Roman, for the obvious reason, because he's getting a massive push and they're trying really hard to do the right thing, and they've been on the money so far. Other than that, man, everybody else is out there playing in the dark.
Same level. You got anything yet?
No, that was good, man.
Thanks a lot. Last thing. Last thing. This promise. With all of the things going on right now, there's been a little bit of chatter. Maybe AEW and WWE, might do business. I know there's rumors that people want it. They're trying to speculate. Do you ever see any type of event or possibility of AEW and WWE doing some type of crossover inter-promotion type of event?
No.
Yeah, I don't see that.
And not for the reason that people think. Look, when I was in WWE the last time as an executive for 4 months, that was right when WWE had just signed their deal with Fox a few months before I got there. And so WWE had a show on Fox and a show on USA Network. Well, these are two different companies. They're not going to do anything to try to help each other. They're not, it was a big issue when I was there. Fox wanted their talent to be exclusive to their network. USA wanted that talent to be exclusive to that network, and they didn't want a lot of talent crossing over. That's the way networks are. If a network is going to use their platform to build a star, they don't want to invest, because they're investing too. They're paying money every week for that show to be on their network. They own that real estate, so to speak. And as that talent emerges on their real estate, They don't want that talent going over and helping another network that they're not related to financially. Now, can you imagine if let's entertain ourselves and say, Vince McMahon and Tony Khan met in a restaurant one morning and said, hey, let's do something and we'll do a talent exchange. Can you imagine what Fox Network would say? Yeah. Or USA Network would say? Or even TNT Network would say, wait a minute, why are we helping them? This doesn't make any sense. It would be no different than, the Detroit Tigers getting, a hot pitcher. Let's pretend. and then having somebody say, hey, well, maybe you should go over, let them play with Cleveland for a little while and then come back. No, we're not doing that.
That's like, it's like you putting Roman on the biggest star, Roman Reigns, on AEW. That will work out better for them than you putting somebody like Kenny Omega in the WWE. That won't move the number for him, So it's just, I can kind of see I see exactly what you're saying. It's like, it's not beneficial.
No, and I think, people are going to naturally think about scenarios like that because as fans, that's what we do, right? Just like sports fans are armchair, coaches and quarterbacks. Everybody's got I always tell people, I've never played one down of football in my life, organized football. Never. I've never stepped on a field. But I guarantee you, if somebody would give me the head coaching job for, let's say, who lost to Tampa Bay? Seattle this year? No.
Kansas City.
Kansas City. If they would have made me the head coach of the Kansas City Chiefs the day after the Super Bowl, and I could have gone back and told them with 20/20 hindsight how to play the game, I'd be one of the greatest coaches in history because I have perfect 20/20 vision. But that's not possible. It's just not possible. So I think wrestling fans who are always kind of armchair quarterbacking, the way sports fans often do, are looking at, AEW and Impact. I'm sorry. Does anybody give a fuck? I don't. I don't. And guess what? Just because I don't doesn't mean it doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
But if you look at the ratings for Impact and you look at the ratings for AEW, I stand by what I said. Nobody gives a fuck. It hasn't changed anything. It's kind of interesting because you see people, going back and forth, but it doesn't move the needle. It doesn't grow the audience. And that's the name of the game when you're producing TV, is to grow, whether it doesn't matter what it is. If it's Game of Thrones, your goal is to grow your audience. If it's professional wrestling, it's grow your audience. No matter what the show is that you love, as the producer or the network that owns that show, your job is to make that audience grow every single episode, every single week, every single month, every single year. If you're not showing growth year over year or week over week, you're backing up. So until somebody comes up with an equation that actually elevates the entire audience, have fun doing that, but it doesn't really matter.
You know what? As like you just really said something that stuck with me. As wrestling fans, we sometimes forget that, hey, this is a business. And things have to be done in a way that, yes, we want to appease the fans, but at the same time, we have to run a legitimate business and make business decisions in our best interest as well. Yeah. So then that's you got a good point. Don't like it. I want my that's happening, but I concede. But Eric,
but the more you start thinking about that, and the more you start recognizing why some of the things might be happening that are happening, and use your imagination to just start wondering, like, what business decision might be behind that. You'll actually enjoy the product more than just going, damn it, why do they bring up the Hurt Business? These people drive me crazy. I hate wrestling. I hate it. And that happens all the time, right? But when you start looking at it and breaking it down from a different perspective, it becomes more interesting, just in a different way.
Hey,
You broke it down for me.
broke it down for me. All hail to the WWE Hall of Famer Eric Bischoff. Once again, it's been a pleasure. We gotta throw us some wrestling guests, man. These guys are not responding to us. We need you to work that Hall of Famer magic on them now. Tell them to come support the Woodward Sports Network.
Hell, nobody even returns my phone calls half the time. I can see them all. I call people every once in a while because I want to chat. I can just see them sitting home going, "Oh, not that clown again." Ugh.
Oh, come on. Well, hey, thank you. You've been very accessible to us, and we appreciate you. And again, we got your number, so we're gonna definitely bug you, and I'm gonna pick your brain. If I see some of the rest, like, why the F did they do that? And whenever you return my call or text, I'll be very gracious.
Hey, you guys can call me anytime. I love doing your show. I dig you guys. You're young, you're growing, you're passionate, and I love doing stuff like this with guys like you. So anytime, you've got my number.